Good morning, fellow vanilla lovers. Let's get the middle of the week started with some Countdown to Classic. This is a podcast that educates, informs, and gossips about World of Warcraft Classic. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we discuss the news, hot button issues, and content of the highly anticipated World of Warcraft Classic. I'm your host, Josh Corbett, and thank you for joining me here on Countdown to Classic. Well, real life has gotten in the way slightly this week as I'm off to the sunny Gold Coast here in Australia for my nephew's 21st birthday, which is sure to be very boozy. And so I'm going to be unleashing another awesome interview on you all today. Now, some of you may be groaning saying, "Ugh, Josh, you're so lazy these days. What's with all these fantastic interviews? We just like your dulcet Australian tones." Or some of you may be rejoicing. Yes, I love the interviews. Bring us more people who actually know a thing or two about the game, rather than that guy with the weird accent. Well, either way, things will be getting back on track soon here at Countdown HQ, but you're still getting your 3 helpings per week, so that's a bonus. Now, today we'll be hearing an amazing interview with listener of the show, Funk Nasty, who gives an incredibly insightful overview of PvP in the game, as Countdown to Classic continues to bring you interesting voices to help expand your knowledge and appreciation for all things vanilla World of Warcraft. You know the drill by now, people. In my interviews, none of the questions are pre-screened and no favors or payments have been exchanged for an interviewee's appearance on the show. But for now, how about we get straight into it and hear from Funk Nasty in this great in-depth interview. Okay, so a big Countdown to Classic welcome to PvP guru, Funk Nasty. How are you?
I'm good. How's it going?
Good, good. Thank you so much for taking the time to appear on the show. I really do appreciate it. Now, if the listeners aren't sure, and they wouldn't know this, you got in touch with me relatively recently after you heard my initial interview a couple of weeks ago with Dustin. And you're actually a fellow guildie of Dustin, is that right?
We were guild mates on Nostalrius.
Right.
In actual vanilla, we were good friends and we PvP together all the time.
Oh, wow. So you guys have known each other for quite a while.
Yeah, we have.
Wow. Okay. And the guild name again for everyone's benefit that you played on a private server with him.
That was the guild Coalition.
Coalition. That's right. Of course. Okay. Well, after you got in touch with me, you mentioned that you are a bit of a PvP master. Would that be fair to say?
Well, let's be clear. I didn't call myself a PvP master.
Oh, no. Sorry. I'm definitely putting words in your mouth there. Let me rephrase. You definitely said that PvP was something you had a lot of experience with. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And so that will be the core theme of this interview, PvP, and we'll get to know a bit more about you. Okay. Just so everyone gets a bit of an insight into who you are as a person and a player, I just thought we'd run through your resume for a few minutes, if that's all right, in terms of World of Warcraft. You ready for that?
Let's do it.
Okay. Question number 1. With as much specificity as you're comfortable with, where in the world are you from?
I live in Atlanta, Georgia.
Excellent. Question number 2. How long have you played World of Warcraft?
I started playing WoW around 2005.
Okie dokie. What was your original main character's name?
My original character's name was Harry Zack, and I was a gnome mage.
Harry Zack. Excellent. Okay. And what other classes have you hit a level cap with?
Well, let's see. In vanilla, I just stuck with my mage. I played some other classes, but I never hit 60. But during Wrath of the Lich King, I had 2 tank alts. I had a level 80 Death Knight and a level 80 Warrior Tank.
Okay. Which server did you play on when you started?
When I played WoW, I rolled on Stormweaver US. It was at one time the most active PvP server in North America. And I stayed playing on Stormweaver all the way up until Cataclysm, and I decided to stop playing at that point.
Okay, out of interest, just a side question. Do you get stats back? How do you figure out which are the most active PvP servers? Was it just a vibe, just a feeling?
No, there was actually articles and stuff written about our server.
Oh, wow. Excellent. Okay, so this is going to be the dumbest question I ask in the interview, but I ask every interviewee this. Do you prefer to play PvP or PvE servers?
I don't think I would ever play on a PvE server.
Okay, PvP for life. Now,
Yes.
outside of PvP, what's your highest raid experience?
Well, in vanilla, I really didn't raid. I just had every once in a while a friend in like a, just random guild that wasn't great.
Mm-hmm.
Might need a person and invite me along. I didn't actually get into raiding until Wrath of the Lich King, and I really did have a good time raiding. Ulduar is just an amazing raid.
Mm-hmm. What about on private servers? What have you done?
On private servers, I've raided all the on Anathema, which used to be called Nostalrius, I cleared all the content.
Okay, so everything 100% complete. Love it. Are you currently playing World of Warcraft? And if so, where?
I'm still playing on Anathema, and I play a little bit on Lightbringer. And I do not play retail currently. I haven't played since Cataclysm.
Okay. Do you have a quick plug for anything? Are you on YouTube or do you stream or anything like that? Where can people find you online?
Not currently. I've thought about streaming a couple times, but the only place you can find me is in game.
Okay, so you don't lurk any forums or anything like that?
I'm in a lot of Discords.
Okay, no worries. Now, complete this sentence so we know where your allegiances lie. For the
Alliance.
All right, there we go. I think you're the first person to be an Alliance player on the show, so good to get an angle from the Alliance side. Now that we know a bit more about you as a person and a player, let's get into the bulk of the interview. Now, I'm going to start with a bit of a layup of a question here. We're talking PvP and all things PvP during this interview. So, first up, what do you prefer? Well, actually, no, I'll start with this. Tell people about your PvP resume now that we've covered your general resume.
All right, well, as you know, in vanilla, arenas didn't exist. So the only PvP that you could do was out in the world. And then as they started introducing battlegrounds one by one, people started playing battlegrounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically was doing all forms of PvP possible in vanilla. I was out in the world PvPing, and when my CP team was running, we were in the battlegrounds trying to farm as much honor as we could. How it worked is whoever could farm the most honor could push those players to Grand Marshal when they were close enough. And so we worked very hard to be the best CP team on the server and push our friends to Grand Marshal rank.
In terms of world PvP, how much time would you spend on average doing that?
A lot. Back then, there weren't battle masters that you could queue up in cities. So when before Battlegrounds, I was in the world all the time. And then during Battlegrounds, you had to actually go to the Battleground portal where it was located. So for instance, for Warsong Gulch, you had to travel all the way to Ashenvale to where the Warsong Outrider outpost was.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to queue there. And, the queues wouldn't pop instantly and you'd have time to kill. And you and your friends would just run around that zone, and anything was red, it was dead.
Fair enough. Now, sorry, I know you mentioned earlier, but just to summarize, what in vanilla or private servers, what's the highest rank you've achieved in PvP?
On private servers, I reached rank 13 on my Shadow Priest,
Mm-hmm.
Funk Nasty. And then when I was playing, back in 2005 in actual vanilla, I reached rank 11 on my No Mage.
Okay.
I also played rated battlegrounds in Cataclysm, and I was playing around 2700 MMR, and that was very fun.
I can imagine. Now that we've established that, let me ask this. What do you actually prefer, world PvP or battlegrounds?
Well, I guess it depends. If you're playing on like a private server, the world PvP it's there and it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Like on retail WoW, the world PvP is, it's not like Battlegrounds where you're just instantly in a game and the PvP is there. You kind of have to, it's not as great as it was. So it just depends. I mean, I really do like pre-made versus pre-made battlegrounds when everyone is in voice chat, and you're playing another team where everyone's in voice chat and everyone is pretty skilled. And, it's a pretty big, that's the most competitive it can really get. And so the best way I can describe that was rated battlegrounds and Cataclysm. So something like that didn't really exist in original vanilla. So you just kind of had to play without the ratings and make your own teams.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, you've got a lot of experience from the vanilla days and you've since amassed a lot of experience on private servers. Is there a difference in PvP between the two?
Well, the main difference is all the time that has passed and all the technology that's out now. Back when I played during actual vanilla WoW, a lot of these things didn't exist. Social media, like Discord, constantly being able to talk to people. There's way more information out now. You can basically find anything out. Back then, the game was new. You didn't know much. There were many consumables, you may not even know existed. I didn't have engineering as a profession back then. Mm-hmm. Now on a private server, people are aware of so many more things. Engineering is almost required if you want to be good at PvP. There are so many items like grenades and rocket helms. I could go on all day that really, really make PvP a lot more fun and give you an advantage. Also, a huge difference is playing on a private server. You're not restricted to your region. You're playing with people from all over the world. And if you ask me, that's what makes it more fun. I think being able to play with people from around the world is amazing. And what ended up happening was, while people were ranking on Nostalrius, there were multiple pre-mades, and they were actually split up by region. So you'd have the North American pre-made, you'd have the European pre-made, the Chinese pre-mades, a Russian pre-made, and it worked a lot differently than it worked back in actual vanilla. People were kind of fair, and so I was playing on the top CP team, so we would actually choose, set the bracket caps, and then we would choose who would be getting. Really, bracket 1 is the only bracket that you have to actually award to people. So we would hand out those bracket 1 spots. Whereas back in actual vanilla, at least on my server, it didn't work like that. It was like every man for themselves. Each group was just really trying to push as much honor as they could. Whereas now on private servers, everyone works together, all the pre-mades, to set caps, not go over those caps, and hand out spots.
So is it fair to say that the PvP game on private servers is much more focused and serious?
Yeah. I mean, 100%.
Yeah. Does it blatantly feel different in terms of the theory crafting and the attention to detail that people pay now?
Yes. People are they're better at the game. I mean, so much time has passed.
One thing you said that really does intrigue me, talking about the global aspect of private servers, and this is something that does come up in these interviews that I conduct every now and again when we talk about, and as I say here on the show, I don't think that I necessarily promote private servers, but I definitely do not ignore their existence. But I'm intrigued to hear from people that spend a lot of time on them, because I haven't. And when you say things like it was a bit of a global experience in that you bumped into people from all over the world, and now you had these PvP pre-mates, and you had the Russians, the Chinese, and everyone, and the Americans. Now, did you stick with the Americans, or did you mix it up a little bit?
Well, for me personally, basically give you a rundown of how it goes. You ding 60, your gear is pretty garbage, and depending on your class, it can be pretty rough. So you kind of just play by yourself or maybe with a couple friends, unless you've been playing on private servers and you have some friends that have a group running already and for some reason they invite you. But the odds of you getting invited to a real pre-made when you're a fresh 60 and just started ranking is pretty low. So you just kind of PvP on your own, and you don't have to PvP too much because you can only gain so much rank at that low of a level, and you only have to spend so much time. So I would say once I was about maybe rank 6 or so, I just started PvPing with any pre-made that would take me. I remember playing with the Russians a lot. They they either didn't speak English or didn't want to speak English. So I would be in team speak with them and just not understanding what they were saying. But
wow, what was that like?
It was pretty crazy, but we actually did pretty well. I think when we would play Arathi Basin on Basin weekends, we would, pretty much 4-cap most of the games.
Even without the ability to communicate, was it just sort of an intuitive thing?
Well, I've been playing WoW for a long time, so I don't really need to communicate with the 14 other people or the 9 other people unless it's a very intense game.
Insane. Yeah, sorry, go on.
But then as it went on, I think around rank 10 or 11, well, I actually the key to getting into pre-mains is you have to whisper people, and you just have to let people know that you want to play. And so I think I was around rank 8 or 9, and I saw someone in a war song, and he was with a few friends, and we were just winning game after game, 8-minute wins, 10-minute wins. And so I whispered him, and I was like, hey, I'm on a lot. Hit me up next time you guys are doing games. And he was like, sure. And the next time I saw him, I hit him up and he didn't have a spot. But the time after that, I logged in and he was just chilling there. And I whispered him, and he had one spot in his Warsong group, and he invited me. And that was when, I really started getting into that pre-made with me and him. We eventually became the top pre-made on the server. But I wasn't actually in the pre-made consistently until I was probably about rank 10 or 11, because there's just no point in someone being in that pre-made all day, every week, and getting that much honor until you're ranked 10 or 11.
Now, when you notice these different groups running around, sorry, just one last question, because I do find it super interesting. Would you notice different tactics between the different cultures or countries, so to speak? Would the Chinese do things blatantly different in a battleground to the Russians or things like that?
Certainly. I can talk about Warsong at first. I specifically remember this one Russian pre-made. They would just turtle the flag room. They would see my pre-made. They would know they cannot win, and they would all sit in the flag room and just try and farm as many kills as they could. And I remember in Arathi Basin, a lot of the Chinese pre-mades, they know they're going to get 4 or 5 caps. A lot of them, they would just send 14 or 15 straight to the gold mine. And you had to make sure that they couldn't take the gold mine, because then if they did, it could be a problem taking it back. And when you're trying to efficiently farm honor, you want to get those 5 bases right away so you can get your 5 cap and you can quickly get out and queue up again.
Fascinating. Now, just one last point on the Chinese. You mentioned to me in your contact earlier in the week when we were touching on what topics we might be able to hit on during this interview, that the Chinese also actually were involved in selling spots for PvP. Is that correct? Yeah,
the Chinese are they're wonderful people. They do lots of crazy things. One of the things they would do is they indeed were selling spots in their pre-made to boost people, and they would sell a spot for 3,000 USD.
Wow, that's a lot of money, obviously. But how did you guys become aware of this? Was it openly advertised?
I'm not the one who found out initially, but when you're a part of a community, you find out about these things. And I specifically remember when we found this out. And then you also have win trading. I don't want to just say the Chinese were win trading, because other pre-mades also got caught win trading, but
right.
That also went on, and it always helps to have help from the community, because when actual players on the server are looking for that and providing evidence for that, that's how you're able to catch those people and get them temporary banned or completely banned from the server.
Well, I was going to say, what's your personal attitude to win trading, and how do you feel it affects a game?
Well, win trading is ridiculous. You should not win trade under any circumstances. You should queue into your game, and you should fight another team that wants to win just as much as you. If you're not, you should just log off, because you're not playing a game.
And flowing on from that, how do you feel about teams that basically very early in a game, perhaps maybe in still winnable situations, just yell out, everyone give up, let's just go to the next game, screw this one, because that happened to me a lot back in the day and always used to give me the shits a little bit.
Well, it depends. I've done that a couple of times myself, but that was only when I was ranking. and that's all about efficiency. And if it comes to a choice of, oh, you want to be stuck in this game for an hour or 2 hours, or you can get out of it quickly and get to the next game, sometimes you want to get out of it quickly and get to the next game. It all depends on how much honor you need for the rest of the week.
Mm-hmm.
And, who's leading the group. And usually if I'm leading, people don't have a choice. I tell them we're AFKing, but that would happen rarely.
Fair enough. So would you like, if you were 2-0 down in Warsong, is that the kind of moment where you'd be like, just give up? Or you'd be like, no, we can do this, boys?
No, absolutely not. I'm talking about games that have already been going on for maybe 30 minutes. Games where the Horde are just maybe full turtling. You've tried a few times and you just can't get the flag out. They're not even attempting to go get the flag. They're just all turtling in the base, and the game's lasting forever. And why would you waste 2-3 hours in a game and get nothing done?
Fair enough. Now, touching on Battlegrounds and sort of Vanilla Honor in general, what are your thoughts on the Vanilla Honor system?
Do you mean also the ranking system, basically?
Yeah, everything in general. Let's say, what are your thoughts on the way in which Vanilla handled PvP?
Well, I think it's an okay system. Obviously, you have to devote a ton of time to ranking once you start getting into the higher ranks. And that's what a lot of people do have problems with. But, you get pretty decent gear, and so it's kind of worth it.
Mm-hmm. And so do you subscribe to the general theory that it rewards time spent as opposed to skill?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, it depends. If you have a thriving PvP community, you can't be bad at the game if you're trying to, push rank 13 or rank 14, unless you're just being completely carried.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can. It's just you're going to have to play all day, every day, maybe 7 days a week. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And even then, you might not reach rank 13 or rank 14 if there's a lot of other pre-mates that are just way ahead of you in honor games.
Now, just explain to people, if they're not quite sure, or if, like me, they haven't PvP'd much in the past, what is the life of a ranker? What happens? What's the general sort of week look like when you're trying to rank?
Well, it depends. Like back in actual vanilla, it was more casual. You just logged on whenever you had time to play, and usually your group was already running, and you would whisper your friend who was leading the group or assisting to lead the group and let them know you're ready for an invite whenever there's a spot. And if you're one of those players that they want in the group, they'll usually invite you right away into the group.
And how many hours per week would this kind of encompass? Let's say for you in general, how much time were you spending on all this back in the day?
Probably not as much time. I'll contrast that to on Nostalrius. When I ranked on Nostalrius, we had once I was, let's say, rank 10 or rank 11, we had a very strict system set up where we would have, basically you have 3 honor weekends. You have an Alterac Valley weekend, a Warsong weekend, and a Basin weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And we would actually be able to play Arathi Basin, not just on Arathi Basin weekend, but on Alterac Valley weekends because of the server being so big and being so active. We had a very strict system set up where we would have a roster of 15 people that were supposed to be on at a specific time, and we would play for 14 hours a day straight.
Wow.
And so for me being in America, I was playing with the European pre-made. And so I would wake up at 3:45 in the morning, and by 4 a.m. we were queuing.
Mm.
And we would do that every single day until people started getting capped. And so it could take you maybe till Saturday, maybe till Sunday, but usually you're capping pretty early, especially if you're playing Arathi Basin 2 out of the 3 weeks, because 5 capping Arathi Basin games is the fastest way to get honor. You have your 15-man roster of those 15 people. We're on at the same time every day to start playing. And when one of those people has to go eat or whatever they have to do, we have tons of people on a wait list. That spot gets immediately filled. And then when that original person is back and ready, we remove someone who's not one of those 15 that are on the roster and put that person immediately back into the group.
Wow. So, I mean, I've read a lot on forums about this because, as a lot of listeners know, I'm not much of a PvPer at all. But I've obviously come across the notions of the time sink. But it almost sounds like, is it fair to say that you virtually had to be like a student or someone who just literally had all that free time?
Yes and no. There are people that have jobs that rank. It just takes them longer to do so. And it also takes them longer throughout the week to achieve their goal. So it takes them longer to reach the cap they're going for during the week. And then it takes them longer to reach the rank they're trying to get to over however many months it takes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, there are some people who have a job and they just don't even try. But if you get home from your job and you spend all those other hours ranking, you can do it. People have done it.
Okay. Now, you've mentioned that you were a member of a pre-made team. It was a pretty good team. Does team structure matter at all, or does everyone just play whatever they are?
No, it's important to have vanilla is all about roles. It's important to have certain classes in your group, especially for certain battlegrounds. Like, it's great to have an excess of hunters for Arathi Basin. It really depends. Like for the Horde, controlling Blacksmith is very important. If you can deny the Horde the Blacksmith in an actual real game,
mm-hmm.
they're probably not going to win.
Mm-hmm.
Because once they have the Blacksmith, they can rotate to any base very quickly. And so if you can send 2 to 3 hunters to the Blacksmith, you can just drain all their mana pretty quickly, and then there's nothing they can do about it.
Mm. Any other sort of niche things about certain battlegrounds like that? Is there something with Alterac Valley that is a prime objective early on?
Well, I guess it depends on gear, but there comes a time when you can just rush, like for instance, from the Alliance point of view, where you can just rush south from the start and run right into Drexrum and off-tank the War Masters and kill Drek.
Moving on a little bit, perhaps from battlegrounds. Obviously, sorry, there's so much to hit on in this interview, and it may even be the case that we might have to talk to you again later down the track. But I just want to move on to obviously we've still got World PvP and Twinking to hit as well, and I definitely want to give them all sort of equal time. So just starting with World PvP, we very briefly touched on it earlier, but can you tell me? Let's start with this general one. What were some of your favorite areas to go looking for a bit of a World PvP fight?
Well, on Nostalrius, the greatest place I found was Dire Maul. Now, in original WoW, it wasn't a great place to go World PvP if people didn't know that you could solo farm Dire Maul East with a mage or a priest with Holy Nova. Only certain classes could. And so on Nostalrius, you literally had lots of people just funneling into the Dire Maul area and doing going in and doing dungeon resets solo to just farm the materials to make gold. And me and actually my friend Dustin, who you interviewed earlier, we would head down there, and it was just a war zone. There was just constant amounts of people flowing into that zone. There wasn't even time to drink or eat. Just people everywhere. It was absurd. And when the Horde rankers are ranking and they queue up, they fly there and they come as a raid because it's one of the good areas for them to go to. And they just sweep that zone as however many are in their group, 10, 15, what have you. Just like the Alliance would do the same. When you're queuing in Ironforge, you can fly right to Thorium Point after you queue and sweep Searing Gorge. So that's how serious the ranking was. You would queue up, and if you have time between it popping, you fly to Searing Gorge and you try and still in the world farm as much honor as you can.
Wow.
So I'd say Dire Maul and Searing Gorge are probably the best spots, but the most fun is wiping entire guilds that are preparing to buff, whether it's on TG Island or guilds that have already fully buffed, and they're riding into Blackrock Mountain, and you're there with your raid waiting for them. There's nothing is more fun than wiping an entire guild with full raid buffs that's about to run into Blackrock Mountain to raid.
Yes, I mean, as much as I love the thought of you and Dustin rolling up to Dire Maul like the Bash Brothers to go and take people on, I do want to hear more about this rolling of guilds once they've got the world buffs. So obviously you're in coalition, would the guild chat fire up about, hey, let's all go mess with another guild now that they've got their, like, let's park at ZG Island and try and get people who've got the buffs?
Yeah, we would form a raid with our guild and maybe this other guild called Nope. Nope was very good about forming PvP raids, much so better than our guild. Our guild was very PvE focused. So Nope would usually form a raid, and whoever from Coalition that wanted to come would roll with. And it just depends. It depends on what you were doing and what information you had. If you had some information that maybe Dream State was about to buff on ZG Island, you would have everyone already there logged out and waiting, and you'd have spies, and you would see when they were there and they were about to buff, and everybody would log in and just AoE them down. And then you have, Wednesday is raid day, so on Wednesday you can just sit in Blackrock Mountain during raid time, whether it's for EU or NA, and you just know these certain guilds are going to just come in through Blackrock Mountain, and you just sit there and they just come right to you.
So I'm presuming that some of these guilds that you were just absolutely decimating at these locations must have been somewhat relatively accomplished guilds as well. Would that be right?
Yeah, at the time, Nope and Coalition were the top two guilds on the server.
Oh, no, so I understand that those two were very, very much so the top guilds, but the guilds that you were going after, they must have been, like, they couldn't have been scrubs, am I right?
Well, sure, you have all range of good and bad.
Right. So what I'm getting at is, did this cause a lot of animosity on the server between yourself and other guilds?
I mean, that's what WoW is all about. It's about the Horde versus the Alliance. So I wouldn't really say there's more animosity than there should be. I think it's just all in good fun. And, when there's, like the top guilds want to wipe the other top guilds when they pop buffs or when they're on their way into Blackrock Mountain, because it's just, you have, anything to slow them down, whether it's to slow their gear progression down or to just make things harder for them, it is a win.
That's so great. I love it. Tell me, was there ever a moment when you turned up all good to go and get your gank on, and then you got a bit more of a fight that you anticipated?
I'm sure it happened, but it's pretty rare because I couldn't name you a specific time.
Right. So normally you were the ones having the last laugh.
Yes, I think very recently on Anathema, which was Nostalrius, the server has declined in population. I do remember actually a Horde guild coming to Stormwind while we were buffing and actually gave us some trouble.
Now, talk to me about griefing. What are your thoughts on griefing in the game?
Well, griefing is a part of the game, so at no point do I think any GM or anyone affiliated with running the server should ever step in and say, stop doing this or whatever. And they shouldn't, because it's a part of the game.
Yeah, definitely.
But the one thing I really don't like is high levels killing low levels. If you're like, say, in Duskwood and you're level 25 and you're questing and, the level 60s are there killing you, I think that is despicable.
Right. Not in the spirit of the game, would you say?
Absolutely not. I mean, at least go kill some level 55s if you're level 60. I mean, to go kill someone so far below you that, one spell or one hit is going to kill them is ridiculous. Now, some people will do this to spark up world PvP and to then have more 60s come. And if that's their goal, then I really don't have an issue with that.
Tell me, are you a corpse camper?
It depends what you mean. If you mean corpse camping people well below me, no. But yeah, sure, there have been times where I've camped people my level, and it's it's because most likely because they've started it, and I'm just going to camp you. I don't have anything else to do.
Fair enough. Excellent. No, I love that. It depends how you define it. Okay. Now, still touching on world PvP. Tell me, with the notion of world bosses, because again, I have no experience with this, when world bosses would pop up, what would happen in terms of world PvP surrounding the world boss?
Well, you have people from the top guilds scouting for these world bosses.
Mm-hmm.
There's like windows when they can spawn. So like once, say, a world boss has been killed, you have to wait until the window opens again. And then when it does, people will be scouting for these bosses. And then as soon as they spawn, everybody is, rushing to form the raid to get there. And people will even, guilds will even require that you say have leveled the level 20 warlock, because once you've leveled the warlock to level 20, you have the ability to summon people.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can park that summoner, say, out in Ashara, where Azergo spawns. And so when Azergo spawns and you have your spy out there and they see that Azergo spawns, this is another thing that's different than back in the day. Like now you have all these ways to alert people. So if you have a Skype chat or Discord or whatever, you can immediately let people know. Everybody starts logging on, getting summoned, trying to get to the area. And Azergo specifically is just basically outside of Orgrimmar. So the Horde can get there so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a boss where we had many good fights over. And I mean, I'm sure you can find videos of just some crazy, crazy world boss antics where I remember once kiting Azergos all the way from where he spawns in Ashara to Darkshore.
Wow. Is there an area in the game that even you, as an experienced veteran PvP player, are somewhat hesitant to go to?
You mean just like geographically?
Yeah. Is there an area that you're like, you know what? I have no interest. I don't want to deal with what goes on there. Even though I love PvP, it's just a bit full on.
I don't know. No, I think what's great about WoW is they built such a beautiful open world. And I don't know, unless you're not into PvP and you just don't like dealing with the rigors of what that harsh world represents, you might want to deal with it. But I'll go wherever I want to go. And, if I end up getting camped or whatever by someone, I'll call some friends. And if some friends aren't around, then maybe I can't escape for some reason, which would be super rare. I'll just go do something else.
Okay. Now, next I want to touch on the topic of twinking. One thing that stood out to me in your email to me when you first approached me a little while ago was, is it fair to say, and I don't want to put you on the spot, that you fancy yourself as quite the twinker?
Yeah, when it comes to 60 PvP, I would never say that I'm the best or I'm the master.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to level 19 Twink PvP, at least when I was playing during the Burning Crusade, I was probably the best gnome warrior in North America.
All right. I love it. The gauntlet has been absolutely thrown down. The best gnome warrior. So the best warrior in North America or the best gnome warrior? Is that how we're saying
warrior.
it? Warrior. Oh, I love it even more. This is perfect. Awesome. All right. I think a lot of listeners have just stood up to full attention now that they want to hear about this. So this is something that really intrigued me, and I love that you're so confident because I feel like you obviously might have a lot to say on this topic. But twinks, talk to me about it. First of all, what is it that you love about twinking?
Well, at first, the thing with World of Warcraft is everything takes a lot of time to do. So in actual vanilla back in 2005, I just realized that you could stop, say, at level 19 and maybe acquire some decent gear and maybe get a few enchants and PvP, and the games would pop and it would be fun. Mm-hmm. Instead of having to spend months trying to get your character to level 60, get gear, enchant it, and then a new raid comes out and you have to get the next gear and you have to enchant it. And since I love PvP, I wanted to be able to quickly make a character with good gear and good enchants and never have to update that gear and enchants, never have to put any more PvE type of work into the character. I just wanted to PvP. And so that was what got me into twinking. And that was in vanilla when there weren't many twinks around and when it was frowned upon by a lot of people because they thought that people just did it to beat up on, the people that were just passing through the bracket with just whatever gear they were acquiring out in the world. And there was not many people that liked twinking compared to people that did like twinking.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell the listeners if they're not quite sure, and myself as well, because one of my biggest regrets from Vanilla World of Warcraft is not getting involved in twinking, and it's something that really interests me for Classic. What's the process of making a good twink?
Well, first you have to have friends to help you out. That's the number one.
Mm-hmm. So I'm screwed. Okay, got it.
Yeah, you're screwed. No. So basically, yeah, you need some friends and you have to have the knowledge. And so like in vanilla and even in the Burning Crusade, everything is still kind of new and you don't know of everything. I actually remember when people found out about the fishing hat, which you could fish up from the fishing tournament every Sunday in Stranglethorn Vale if you were lucky. And like people didn't even know that this item existed. And like I remember us finding out about it one day. And my friend was like, we're going to go on Sunday. And I was like, yeah, I'll guard you on my 60. And my other friend will guard you on his 60. And you'll fish on your 19. And, you could go every Sunday trying to fish. You could go weeks without catching a rare fish. But he actually caught the rare fish he needed within the first 20 minutes. And so He was the first person on our server with the fishing hat, which gives you 15 stamina. And you could actually like enchant it with like a high level enchant because it was a level 35 item. But aside from that, basically you just got to have your plan mapped out because you can't turn experience off, whether it's a private server or back then. On retail, they eventually changed that and you could turn your experience off. But because you couldn't do that, you had to have everything planned out very well. You need to make sure you weren't getting too much experience when you were trying to get your gear. And basically, you have, certain bind on equip items that may be best in slot, and you can purchase those off the auction house. But then depending on your class, you may have a few or a lot of bind on pickup items that are best in slot for your class. And you'll have to go to certain, 5-mans and you'll have to farm these items. So, some of them may be just a quest, like the Talbar's Mantle is just the actual quest that you do in the Wailing Caverns. And other items will be drops, and it could take you, one clear. It could take you many clears to get the item that you need. One trick we used to do is I would basically die or just be it depends on where you are. Some of the instances aren't linear, and I remember in Wailing Caverns I could just stand at the front and not even move. Just literally be at the front of the instance, and my friend could go to some certain bosses that would literally be like directly overhead of me, and I wouldn't get the experience from all those mobs being killed. And when he would kill the boss, if the item that dropped that I needed, he could just master loot it directly to me. There was also a huge chain for this item called the Glacial Stone. It was a gigantic chain that you had to do out in Ashenvale. It was like a 22 quest chain. And I did that on my warrior, and you had to make sure that you had the experience to do all this stuff. Also exploring. You had to, if you wanted to ever go somewhere in the future, you wanted to pre-explore these areas. Like we love to go like 3 to 5 of us as level 19 twinks out to Stone Town and World PvP with the higher levels out there, like anywhere from level 22 to 40 forward characters you would see out there. And we would attack them as level 19s. And it was so much fun. But if you didn't pre-explore that area and you didn't have enough experience left, you could ding your character 20. And that would be like, if you basically accidentally dinging 20 was like the nightmare no one ever wanted to do. And it would happen sometimes to people that weren't paying attention.
I could imagine. Did it ever happen to you?
No, my No Warrior Juicy got very close. I mean, I only had less than a bar left. I think at one point I had only 1/4 of that bar left, but I knew where I could go and where I couldn't go. And I only dinged when I wanted to. Many expansions later, I decided to level to 20. Yes,
I would say dinging when you want to is a key skill to have in life. Now, moving on from that, it's something that has really intrigued me because just again, back on the 5-mans that you were talking about, and this is something that I'm going to have to do a lot of research on when I try and make my own twink in Classic. If you didn't get the items that you were gunning for, obviously there must have been a certain point where you just had to move on for fear of experience.
No, if you're doing it right, you'll get the items you need.
Okay. Have you ever had a situation where you couldn't get the items you wanted, but were progressing to the point that you just had to start again and start a new turn and do it all again?
No, I never had any problem. We were veterans. at basically by the Burning Crusade,
Yeah.
like when, we could make somebody a twink in basically 48 hours.
Okay, so there were no growing pains or anything like that when you first decided to get into it?
I mean, I would say like most of vanilla was like the learning curve. Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, like in vanilla, my first twink, which was a paladin, and oh my God, I had so much fun playing it, was just whatever I could get, it was totally different than what I've explained. I was 19 and just, maybe I would see like a weapon on the auction house that was, I think I had like 4 or 5 different two-handed weapons on that twink. I would just see something better appear on the auction house and purchase it if I had the gold. Like what I mean? It was, you just didn't know what was out there, what was good, and you would just wing it. You know what I'm saying? But by the time Burning Crusade rolled around, people had more information and twinking was becoming a little more mainstream. That was when we started setting up actual 10 versus 10, pre-made versus pre-made Warsong Gulches, a guild versus guild. Just like you get like just like rated Battlegrounds, let's say, in Cataclysm before I quit.
Okay, getting into that side of things, you've made your character, you've geared them up, you're good to go. It's time for the actual business. And as you say, you get into all these pre-made 10-on-10 matches with other twink guilds and things like that. And you ran a twink guild, is that right? Yeah,
I did for basically in vanilla and in the Burning Crusade and in Wrath of the Lich King. I ran a twink guild, and it was, I mean, the friends that I made and the fun times that we had were unbelievable. And we didn't have tons and tons of those pre-made matches, but when we would set a time, we would speak with the Horde Guild, and I would speak with the Horde Guild leader. We would set up a time, and we would all get into vent, and we would queue up together, and then we would communicate and make sure we had the right number queue, and then we would all take the queue, and if we all got, get in the correct game, we would have a guild versus guild match, and it could last maybe 17 minutes or it could last an hour. And it was, it's people, again, I said, people have looked down on twinking in the past, but I've played 60 PvP at the highest level, and it can be just as fun, even more fun doing that on level 19s.
So you're good to go. You've got your friends together, and you get into these battlegrounds. Tell me, you began this subject saying that you were numero uno. You were the number one warrior in twinking in North America. So my question's going to be, not so much what did you do that made you number one, but I mean, obviously a lot of people are aware of rotations and things like that, but did you do anything different, or did you have an angle or a tactic or a tip that you felt differentiated yourself from the competition?
Well, I probably ran somewhat of an orthodox defense. I always placed myself as a warrior on defense, but I also play warrior a lot differently than a lot of other people were playing it. So when the opposing team, basically how it usually works is each team gets the flag across. And so you've got their flag and they've got your flag. And you send your offense and they send their offense. And then you have your defense. And I wanted to say that we usually had a 4-man defense. And so we would send 6 offense, and we need to make sure that we had an offensive dispeller on offense. But I always had to be on defense because I'm very difficult to kill, and I can weave through everybody and make sure they're all hamstrung at all times. And if everyone's hamstrung at all times, they're moving exceedingly slow and we can't get anything done. And if they can trinket out of it or whatever, they just get re-hamstrung, and then that's it. There's no way for them to remove it. And if you have a shaman with you that can drop, at that point in the Burning Crusade, you could have a shaman with Alliance as well. So if you also have your Earthbind totems down, so they're getting slowed by Earthbinds, they're all slowed by my hamstrings. And if you have a proper Druid flag carrier, and you have someone like me who just knows the strats, trust their teammates. I mean, I know nothing's going to go wrong on defense when I'm on defense, so I don't have to worry about us losing the flag. I just have to worry about my offensive team doing their job.
Okay. Now, I apologize if it feels like a silly question, but you've obviously said the word defense a lot there. Are you running a prot spec?
Well, I mean, it's hard to...
I know you've only got 9 points or what have you, because you're 19,
you
exactly.
10 points to spend. Yeah, you have 10 points to spend at level 19, so it's really, I never really would would call something like that, like prot or whatever. But I wouldn't actually put points into protection. The first 10 points, some people will put points into tactical mastery, which saves you rage from switching stances, but I never switch stance much at all at level 19. I'm just trying to remember what I put my points into, but definitely not protection. I probably put my points into like improved charge and probably like the crit talent, because I was very unique in the sets of gear that I had. I had 3 different sets of gear. I had a full crit set, I had a full dodge set, and I had a full stamina set. Like, for instance, my full dodge set, I don't know if you know of the Arena Grandmaster trinket.
I do not.
Heard of that before?
No.
Okay, so there's, the Gurubashi Arena lies in Stranglethorn Vale. And every 3 hours, Short John Mithril walks from the rafters down in there, and he places a chest. And anybody can come and try and take the chest.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah.
Yes. When you're in that arena, everyone is red. So even people of your own faction, unless you've invited them to party, are red to you, and you can kill them. And so basically it's a free-for-all for the chest, and we all used to help each other getting the chest. And a good twink would have 1 Arena Grandmaster, and you would have to loot the chest 12 times to get your Arena Grandmaster, because the quest required 12 of the marks that come from the chest. And so for my dodge set, because it gave you, I think, 12 dodge rating, which came out to 1% dodge at level 19, I had 2 of those, right? And I had 2 Meadow Ring of Eludings, which each gave you an extra % of dodge. And I would just stack dodge. So I had a crazy dodge set, I had a crazy crit set, and a nice stamina set. So whatever the situation called for, I would equip that gear.
Okay. Well, I guess the reason I mentioned prot is because you did mention that word defense a few times, and you say you go with a defensive attitude. So is it more so that whilst, yes, you're not putting talent points into the protection spec, you're still absolutely kind of there to absorb damage and not so much be on the DPS burn down side of things?
I mean, I'm definitely trying to kill people, but my job is to make sure that our flag carrier doesn't get killed. And so to do that, I have to make sure everyone is slow. I mean, it's a moving defense, just like it would be at say level 60 when things get hectic. Like, you're kind of standing still, but if you have to move, you have to move. And so your Druid flag carrier will start to move. And then you want to make sure that everyone that's chasing that Druid flag carrier, if you stole them all, then your Druid flag carrier is gone. He's safe. And yeah, that's I definitely am killing people at the same time.
I can imagine. You mentioned your sets that you were very happy with. Were there any particular items? Like, I know we talk about things like best in slot, and obviously with Twinks there are, just these amazing items that people absolutely gun for that you really have to have. Were there any funny items that you felt were awesome and a little bit underappreciated that you used, or were you just using all the best in slot stuff?
Well, I guess when it comes to different sets, I would say there weren't many, if any at all, warriors that had an agility set. And so like my agility set, which was like basically a crit set, because agility gives you crit. I don't know any warriors like that had that. Like they all just had a stamina strength set, and like that was it. I was like the only person that really took it further than that.
And did you find, what kind of different results would you find you'd get when you're switching between these sets? When you stack on that agility set, did it noticeably change the gameplay?
Yeah, I liked running with a set that gave me a high amount of dodge and crit, because I'm critting a lot, doing a lot of damage, and I'm also dodging a lot. And for instance, like when you're fighting a hunter at level 19, once you're wing clipped, their wing clip has 10% more of a slow than your hamstring. So you have to basically sit so tight on that hunter. And it's just really great to be able to maybe dodge their first wing clip or their second wing clip, because if you don't and they're able to get that tiny bit of separation, I mean, that's it. You don't have intercept, you're stuck in combat, and there's really not many ways at all to close the gap.
Now, I'm going to move on to, I've just got a couple of quick questions about PvE, and then we've got some listener questions we've got to get through. So that's kind of it for the PvP portion of things. But what I've realized as we've gone through this interview is that we have barely scratched the surface. And this was much more, obviously, a bit more of a generalized chat about PvP. But I've got so many more questions that I'm interested in terms of specific battlegrounds, specific tactics, how you tackled certain classes and things like that. So maybe one day, if we can, we might love to get you back to go into the specifics of things on PvP.
Yeah, that sounds great. Like, just really quick, like, there's one point when rogues at level 19 could have an absurd amount of dodge. I remember this one guy had like almost 98% dodge at level 19 as a rogue.
Wow.
You had to be a rogue. And it was difficult to land abilities. And so, even just a regular rogue that maybe didn't have that much dodge, I had to make sure that, to get behind them at the right time and use my hamstrings. So let's say two rogues pop out of stealth on me, and I don't think I'm going to be able to handle the fight. I have to get behind them. I have to land those two hamstrings, and then I can waltz away from them.
And that was something you were able to pull off on a pretty regular basis?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good at, quickly getting behind a rogue and landing a hamstring.
Oh, I love it. No, we'll definitely have to give you a bit more of a chance to tell people about what made you as skilled as you were. But I just want to touch on, you mentioned in your email as well to me that obviously, as we said, you're in Coalition. It was one of the better private server guilds out there. And I asked Dustin when he was on the show about the world first clear of KT, but I think he'd come later to the guild, so he didn't know much about that. But I think you mentioned that you were there for that. Is that correct?
Yeah, he had stopped playing at that point.
Oh, okay.
Because I think he had moved and he had some other stuff going on. But at that point, Nestarius was known as Anathema, and there was really only one other guild that really gave us a real run in the race. And basically what happened is when we got to Kel'Thuzad, the guild that was racing us, I think they still weren't at Saffron, but they got to Saffron fairly quickly. And then they were stuck on him for a while. But we couldn't kill Kel'Thuzad because he was bugged, and he was bugged in 3 different ways.
What were they?
He was the ads that spawned in phase 3. They had way too much health. I'm pretty sure they hit way too hard. They could not be slowed, and you couldn't get the proper amount of shackles up that you should have been able to. And so, once the other guild that was racing with us caught up, because we were trying to kill an unkillable boss, I think their best attempt and our best attempt was around getting Kel'Thuzad to 9%. And what happened is this was on a Saturday, and so the next day, Sunday, my guild decided to continue to bang their heads against the wall on this boss. I wasn't there that day. And the server admins announced that they were going to apply a fix on Monday, and they gave us the time. And so, of course, my guild and the guild that was trying to, even though we had technically won the race already, wanted to kill Kel'Thuzad as well. We were all waiting, and then they took the server down. And then as soon as the server came up, we logged in, and my guild one-shot the boss along with the Horde guild. And I'll give the Horde Guild credit. They killed Kel'Thuzad before us after he came up because they stacked some warlocks and had the DPS. But when you look at the raid as a race, we 100% won the race.
Okay. Now you raided as a Shadow Priest. You mentioned, is that right?
Yeah, I've only played Shadow. People have asked me many times to heal, and my answer is no. I kill things.
Fair enough. Now, did you PvP as a Shadow Priest as well, or did you mainly save that for your other characters?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned that earlier. I ranked to 13, and on my Shadow Priest, I think it was December of 2015 when I finished ranking.
Okay, yep. Now, the reason I bring this up is just very, very, very quickly. In last week's episode, one of the episodes on the show last week, I touched on Shadow Priests, and I don't have very much experience at all on Shadow Priest. I've only taken one to about 35, so, what do I know? But they're a class that's near and dear to my heart because I love playing them but haven't gone very deep with them for some reason. But one massive point of contention that came up from the episode that I did is on Reddit, a lot of people were saying, hey, Josh, buddy, you missed out about the concept of Holy Weavers, which some people felt were better than straight up Shadow Priest for DPS. You simply get someone to pick up Shadow Weaving and then dump everything else into Holy. And they said that save that DPS slot for someone other than a Shadow Priest. So effectively, you've got another healer. What's your take on that?
Well, it depends. I'm not gonna say no to that, but it just depends. If you have a Shadow Priest that knows what they're doing and they have the gear, if you decide to drop that Shadow Priest for another DPS, they would have to be, a certain class. They'd have to do a lot of damage. And the Power Weaver, which is a healer that you've chosen to heal and also keep up the Shadow Weaving buff, is got a lot of stuff to do, and they got to make sure to keep Shadow Weaving up. And I mean, that is a point of contention, and I'm not going to say that's wrong at all, but it's definitely not something that's needed. I mean, basically, a lot of people talk about rating in this min-max, like everything must be maxed out to its potential. Like we must have squeeze every last damage out of this raid. So we must drop this Shadow Priest and have this healer who heals try and weave. I think that's kind of ridiculous. Unless you're trying to be the number one guild and trying to win some kind of race, then I completely disagree. And you should bring what people want to play. I mean, you already only bring one Shadow Priest, so if you got one, bring one.
Okay, so is the moral of the story, and I guess it's great for people to hear like me who are considering rolling a Shadow Priest, is the moral of the story that roll what you want to roll and you will still be able to take down the highest end content if you're still skillful?
That 100%. And I also feel when say you were trying to be the top guild or trying to, win the race in AQ or Nax, if you have a Shadow Priest that has the gear, they bring all the consumes, they have the proper gear sets. If you are going to gain some damage by dropping that for another damage and having a healer weave, it's not going to be that big of a difference.
Okay. What advice, just finishing up on this one, would you give to prospective Shadow Priests like me? The one great thing and the one bad thing about the class, is it that you're a PvP god? Is it that you're constantly out of mana? What would you say the pros and cons of being a Shadow Priest?
Well, I did listen to your dealio about Shadow Priests, and one thing I heard come up was, how people say mana is a problem, and they talk about basically Shadow Priest as a DPS class. Shadow Priests they're really not a DPS class, and that's why people talk about dropping them in raids for a healer to power weave. They're a support class. So a good example is, I remember my last week of ranking, I was running my own Warsong group, and I only ran one healer. So this is 10v10, Warsong Gulch, and I only had one Holy Priest with me. I filled the support role, because that's what Shadow Priest is. It's a support class. In Shadow form, I can shield, I can dispel, I can mana burn, I can mind control, I can do all kinds of things. The only thing I really can't do is heal, and all I have to do is leave Shadow form, and I can start healing. So basically, your goal as a Shadow Priest is to do what's needed, use your utility. You don't just act like a mage because you're not a mage. You can do all these other things.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I just want to get to a few listener questions, if that's okay. Sorry, did I just mention, I think I've got is it cool if we go about another 15 or so minutes?
Yeah, whatever you need.
Okay, cool. Thanks, man. It's going really well. Thanks so much. Okay, I just want to get to a few listener questions. I invite my listeners every week to submit some queries that they might have for the interviewee. And this first one comes from listener Seven Winters, who, it's a little bit of a long one, but bear with me. I'll just read this out to you. So Seven Winters says, I think PvP got worse as vanilla progressed. I liked World PvP at Taran Mill versus South Shore, and Battlegrounds eliminated that. I liked city raids, and dishonorable kills often reduced the amount of those. I liked day-long Alterac Valleys and tweaks to Alterac Valley in patches, and the player mentality of finding the fastest way to grind honor, often as it had players running past each other in Alterac Valley, especially on private servers. Not to mention the honor system is inherently grindy and rewards players who play an unhealthy amount of time over actual skilled players. And vanilla PvP is notorious for things like 30-second plus crowd control and very unfun things like that. Why do you love PvP so much, even in the face of all those issues?
Well, it's hard for me to respond. That was to all those issues. There was a lot of issues.
Sorry, not worrying so much about all the specifics, but just in generally, it's no doubt that vanilla PvP wasn't perfect. But despite the issues, was it still easy for you to fall in love with, or did you crack the shit sometimes with some of the problems?
Well, I feel like that person is probably talking from almost a solo perspective. WoW PvP, just like raiding, is meant to be played with your friends. Every class serves a role. So if you're by yourself and you get sheeped and you don't have your trinket up, or you don't have a racial to get out of it, sure, you may be stuck in that sheep for a really long amount of time. But if you're playing with your friends and you have a paladin next to you or a priest next to you, well, that sheep is just going to get dispelled. And so as long as you're playing with your friends and you have group PvP, that's what it's based around. And I've really never found anything more fun than group PvP in World of Warcraft.
That's a great point. Seven Winters asks a follow-up question, and they say the following. Here's a question that will piss everyone off, which I love to do. I don't necessarily think it's a good idea, but do you have any thoughts on the implementation of Arena to Classic? It's actually not as outlandish as it sounds. Arena was implemented in the 2.0 patch, so for the last month or so of vanilla, you could actually participate in Arena at level 60, which I remember having a lot of fun doing. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, at that point, you also had new talents. They gave you the new talents for the next expansion as well during that last month, which also added to being more fun. I remember doing 5v5 arenas that last month of vanilla. Sure, it was fun, but I will say this. It's personal preference. I personally don't like Arena. People may have they may have their own reasons for thinking why people don't like Arena. They may say, "Oh, you're just bad. That's why you don't like Arena." I don't like it because it's not fun for me. You're stuck in a box. Everybody is humping pillars and running around them in a circle. It's just not my idea of fun in any sense of the word. Sure, if you're totally bored and there's nothing to do, doing some arenas with your friends, for me, sure, can be fun. But when it comes to real PvP and I want to have a blast, it takes place out in the world or competitive battleground PvP. And I would not want it to be in vanilla because it would ruin the PvP dynamic that already exists out in the world and in battlegrounds.
Okay. Listener 2 asks the following questions. What are your thoughts on the overall evolution of PvP through retail, and what do you hope for in Classic?
Well, as most people are aware, Blizzard basically killed World PvP over time. Introducing flying mounts in the Burning Crusade was basically what was the first domino. I remember going to this area in Nagrand in the Burning Crusade called Elemental Plateau, and that was where you could farm all different kinds of the motes that you needed, that you could turn into primals, which you need for enchants. And it was kind of like a war zone. And I remember about halfway through, towards the end of the expansion, it was dead. PvP was dead. Nobody was PvPing anymore. And Blizzard tried to then implement things to fix that, like Wintergrasp in Wrath of the Lich King, which was like an area that you would you could control for a certain amount of time, and then once that time ended, there was a battle for it, and there was like you could use siege vehicles and things, and it was like I think it was I can't remember how you won the battle. It's been too long, but once you controlled the area, there was actually a raid within Wintergrasp, and you could kill, like, called Vault of Archibald. It started with one boss, and then they added like at least 2 more bosses later. And I think it's basically pretty weak on Blizzard. They could have done better. In Cataclysm, they had Toberad, which was, their version, another version of Wintergrasp. And that was basically all they were doing to try and save World PvP. And it didn't really do a good job. So basically all you had was Battleground PvP. World PvP had basically died. And I just think that Blizzard stopped really caring. They really focus on PvE. They want to have a really flawless PvE. I remember playing in Cataclysm, having a great time during the first PvP season. Raid Battlegrounds had just come out. And I think towards the end of the season, or just after the first season, Blizzard said, we're going to have pet battles coming out soon. And guess what? We're removing talent trees completely from the game. And I just noticed that, they were just starting to cater to a completely different population of people that were playing WoW. People that just wanted to raid, wanted to sit in cities and have pet battles and do all these kinds of things. And it wasn't the game that I loved anymore. And with some of the rumors we've heard about a Battle for Azeroth, who knows? Maybe they'll try and make a PvP experience like they used to have. But I don't know. I doubt it.
So what do you hope for in Classic? Do you think just a simple going back to obviously the way things were is just that's the Band-Aid, that solves everything? Or do you hope that they tweak something?
I mean, it's hard to say. You have to write all these ideas down. I mean, I'm certainly not for changes, but I'm not going to say that there isn't something you could say that I would say, that's an interesting point. Let's talk about that. And see. But again, there's no problems with Vanilla WoW.
Right.
It's fun. We're all playing it right now on private, or not all of us, but a lot of people are playing on private servers. No one's asking for changes. We're all having a blast. Nestarius was an experience like none other. And what's going to be the problem for Blizzard is creating something like Nestarius, because they're not going to, at least I don't think, they're not going to let you play with people from around the world. You're going to have to play on a North American server or like an EU server. And it's not going to be the same. So I don't know. I just really am not for changes, but I'm always open to hearing what people have to say.
Okay. 2 follows up with this one. What are your thoughts on account sharing and people using that to get up to rank 14? Do you think Blizz would have a different angle on this now?
I mean, no, I don't think they would be okay with account sharing. I think they've never been okay with it. And I don't think they would change their minds. And I'm not okay with it either. I mean, if you should be ranking your own character up, if that's what you choose to do, or you should be raiding with your own character. If someone else is playing it, I don't know, what's the fun in that? You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying, you should definitely not get, say, permanently banned if, say, you get caught doing that. But after like 1 or 2 warnings or temporary suspensions, I don't think it's something that Blizzard should allow a person to continue to do.
Okay. Now, listener North Bear asks this. Are there any, and this is piggybacking a little bit of what we touched on just earlier, are there any changes that you might like to see to the vanilla honor system to avoid it turning into a reward for time played over skill? And obviously you mentioned that no changes, but
I don't know. I think my answer is no. I think what makes it so fun is exactly how it's set up. I understand that some people think you have to spend all day PvPing, but if you, like I explained earlier, I know I said that we played 14 hours a day, but sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes I would play less, and I would usually finish by Saturday or Sunday. So I would have, say, all of Sunday, all of Monday, and all of Tuesday to do whatever I like. So I would keep it the same, because the people people say skill isn't involved, but it is. If you're good at the game and you find other good players and you farm your honor efficiently, it doesn't take nearly as long. You beat people faster. Your games are faster. You may never lose a game for weeks or months, depending on the competition of the opposing factions and how they run their premates.
Okay. Listener Minoru asked this one. Any thoughts on the world PvP objectives like the Plaguelands Towers or Silithus, otherwise known as collecting sand or spawning the sand lol meme?
I remember that back in vanilla, and I don't think it really. I mean, again, I think it was I think they that stuff came out later in vanilla to spark some more world PvP as people had moved into battlegrounds some. But I thought it was a failure, and I mean, it's a part of vanilla, so it should be there. But I mean, I don't think it's going to really encourage PvP.
Okay. Listener Balls of Steel asks this one. How quickly do you think people will grind to rank 14 in Classic compared to how they did back in the day?
Oh, they'll do it much faster. You have people that are going to, first of all, the people that get to 60 first, I mean, they're going to rank very quickly, and they're going to do it in crappy gear. They're going to have greens and whatnot. They're going to hit the battlegrounds right away. And if you have a group of friends that rush to 60 in 3 days or 5 days, people they'll take off work for a week and, just go hard in the paint, and then they're 60 and they're ranking and there's not really much competition. So that goes very quickly. And, again, we're just living in a different time, a different era. There's too much knowledge. There's too much information sharing. Everyone is we're all connected instantly to each other, whether it's on Discord or through social media, and everything just moves quicker now than it used to.
So, having no idea myself, what kind of time frame would we be talking? Would you see a rank 14 person within a month, 6 weeks? How does it work? What do you think will happen?
Oh, are you saying of a server opening?
Once Classic drops, how does it work? Do you think that if you had to put a pin, let's say closest to the pin in terms of weeks after launch when you see a rank 14 person, when would we get that?
Well, I don't know if I could give you a specific answer, but what I could tell you is that once you can only rank up so far each week, no matter how much honor you get. Mm-hmm. So you can't speed that up. So once you get, say, to rank 11, it really takes 2 weeks to then hit rank 12, and then depending on where your honor is, another 2 weeks to hit rank 13. And then it can take, depending on where your honor is, 3 to 4 weeks to hit rank 14. Mm-hmm. So you can that's 4, 6, 8. That's just 8 weeks there alone. So maybe you can add 2 months to that, and it should take you around 4 months probably.
Okay, I see. Now, final listener question from listener Palfurus, who asked this. Is Stranglethorn Vale too chaotic, or is it working completely as intended for PvP?
Stranglethorn Vale is an amazing place. The level range in Stranglethorn is absurd. People start moving into Stranglethorn in their low 30s, and as you move south, you can run into people that are almost level 50 sometimes. It's crazy. If you like to world PvP while you level, I mean, it's just great. You're going to constantly run into people. You're going to have great battles, and that's what makes the game so much fun. And so I wouldn't have it any other way. But, no one's putting a gun to your head and saying, go to Stranglethorn Vale level. There are many other ways to get those levels without stepping foot in Stranglethorn Vale. In fact, I remember on my no mage in vanilla, I didn't go there because I had one previous character, a warlock that I had leveled to 49. And I decided to re-roll, which is a big decision. You've never even hit 60 yet, and you decide at level 49, where you're very close to 60, to re-roll.
Right.
And I re-rolled, and I was leveling up, and I remembered what it was like in Stranglethorn Vale. And sure, I loved the PvP, but this was a point where I wanted to get to 60 quickly. I already wasted a lot of time on that warlock, and I made a conscious decision just to not go to Stranglethorn Vale, to not have to deal with being possibly killed by people, every few minutes or every so often. So I avoided the zone, and it worked out perfectly for me. So if you don't like how Stranglethorn is, don't go there. But man, it's a war zone, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
More than fair enough. Okay. Final question from me, which I was remiss not to ask earlier. What's your favorite battleground?
Oh, I guess it has to be Warsong Gulch. I know it's a very plain game, but it's very nuanced. Capture the Flag is just such, you played it as kids growing up, in the real world, Capture the Flag, at camp, summer camp, things like that. And they brought it to World of Warcraft, and I just love the map and how it's designed. It's like the border between Ashenvale and Barrens, basically. It's like those two warring factions, and it's just, and there's differences. Like the Horde have a fence that you can run along top of if you know how to do it, and you can't do that on the Alliance side. And the Horde has a lot of advantages, I'm saying, in certain areas. As people will say Alliance does too, but I always say the Horde has more. So it's such a nuanced game. I mean, it seems simple on its face, capture the flag, but it's there's no time limit. Like in Arathi Basin, there's a time limit, and Alterac Valley is way too many people. So I just think 10 versus 10 is the perfect amount of players. And the fact that in Vanilla WoW, there's no time limit on Warsong Gulch, and the best team wins.
Look, you've touched on just a couple of things just there. We're going to have to get you back on in a few weeks' time, talking about the specifics of all the battlegrounds and tactics and things like that. If you're up for it, I feel like that's something we really need to explore at some point.
Sounds good.
Okay, but now with all that being done, it's time for a bit of fun, and it's time for anger management. Okay, Funk Nasty, each week I ask each interviewee to hit me up with a little bit of a rant, something that makes them angry about the game or the community. So what is it about World of Warcraft that gets you angry?
What gets me angry is the constant opening of fresh servers. And the perfect example is Nostalrius. Nostalrius, if people remember, was voluntarily shut down after Blizzard sent them a cease and desist. And when it came back up for the first time, as I can't remember the name, but it was eventually changed to Anathema, they decided to, very shortly after, open up a fresh server alongside of it. And basically what that does is it kills the current server over time. Everyone wants to play on the new server, and your population declines, and by the time AQ has been out for a while, everyone's screaming server dev. And it's basically a meme, fresh. Everybody wants to roll fresh. They want to go hop on the next server, raid Molten Core, raid Blackwing Lair. They all think that's like the best time frame. Do the ranking, do the raiding, and then once another fresh server opens up, they just hop to the next one. And how many times can you roll fresh? Right, we're not all kids. We can't all level from 1 to 60 every few months or every year on a new server. It's just ridiculous. You need to roll on a server, become a part of a community, and see that to the end. No one's saying stay on the server forever, but, stay till Nax, raid Nax, keep the community. And again, it was a conscious choice by the admins of the server to do that. And we told them what would happen, and there was a specific admin, I won't say his name, who promised us that if for some reason that happened, they would have a fix for it, and that never came. And of course, the population declined over time very rapidly.
Okay, with that all off your chest now it's time to put you on the hot seat. So each episode here at Countdown to Classic, we ask the interviewee to answer 10 fun hypothetical questions about the game. So you ready for this, Funk Nasty?
I am ready.
All right. Question number 1. Ruling out when is Classic coming out, will there be changes, and will there be patch progression? If you could ask one specific Classic-related question of the developers right now, what would it be?
One specific question. I would want to know how much they're scouring the boards, reading what people are saying, and if they're actually have any intention of making changes to the game.
Fair enough. I too, that's a very interesting one. I'm very interested because they said they wanted our opinions, how much they actually read them. I'm interested in that as well. Now, next question. You're familiar with the game Fuck, Marry, Kill?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a tough one for you. I'm going to give you 3 options. Fuck, marry, or kill. World PvP, Battlegrounds and Twinking.
Wow. I don't think I can answer that question. I want to marry them all and fuck them all. I don't want to kill any of them.
If you gun to your head, if you had to do it, what would you say? Is there one you love a little bit more than the other?
Say them one more time for me.
Okay. Fuck, marry, kill. World PvP, Battlegrounds, and the Art of Twinking.
All right. Wow. Twinking I would kill. And I would marry Battlegrounds and fuck World PvP.
Wow. I thought you'd marry Twinking. There you go. Okay. Next question. If you had to go on an 8-hour road trip with one NPC from the game, who would it be and why?
Maybe Short John Mithril.
Considering he'd given you all that loot in the past.
Yeah, man. I mean, he's got all the money. He's got all the loot. But we're not going to run out of funds.
Yeah, he can buy all the gas along the way.
Plus, goblins are very crafty.
Absolutely. All right. Next question. What's the meanest thing you've ever done in the game?
Meanest thing? I guess maybe, I can, as a priest, you can mind control people, and then people of their own faction can kill them. It's probably the meanest thing I've ever done.
Okay, definitely a lot of fun videos online of some of those kinds of shenanigans. Now, what class, and I think I know the answer to this one, but still, what class would you say you kick ass at, and what class would you say you suck at?
Well, Mage and Shadow Priest I play casters, so I would say Mage or Shadow Priest are probably the classes that I'm very confident in playing, although I haven't played Mage at level 60 in a while. So we could just say Shadow Priest for the sake.
What about warriors? You told us you were the number one warrior.
Oh, at 19? I mean, it's different at 60. I don't enjoy playing melee classes at level 60. But at level 19, 100% warrior, no question. If you're talking about twinking at 19, I would play a warrior always.
Oh, okay. But that's interesting. You feel as you get to 60, your skill declines a little bit.
I wouldn't say that. I would just say at level 60, I enjoy playing casters. I like playing ranged characters. I just don't enjoy playing melee at level 60. It's not my cup of tea.
Fair enough. Now,
if I had to pick a class that I don't want to play, it's Druid. Druid has so many abilities, and it's just ridiculous. I would never want to play a Druid.
I think a lot of people say the same thing, definitely. Now, do you have a proudest in-game moment?
A proudest in-game moment? I don't know. I guess just being a part of the original Vanilla WoW and playing with the people that I did and helping them achieve their goals, whether it was, hitting rank 13 or rank 14. That was the most fun I ever had. That's how I met Dustin, and we still play together today sometimes, and that was probably it.
Do you have a most embarrassing in-game moment?
Man, I mean, it's hard to remember a specific one, but I could say that I was a noob in Vanilla WoW, and even in the Burning Crusade and on. People like to think, they played a game for a bit and they're great at it, but it's like you're always a noob. Like your level of noob just kind of goes down as you play. You're never really not a noob, and there's many stupid things I've done. Actually, I can think of one thing. I remember being in Vanilla WoW playing my gnome mage, and a lot of people, basically most people that PvP non-mages would spec a 3-minute mage, was the term we used to use, and that was an arcane spec where your cooldowns would be up every 3 minutes. And you would pop your arcane power, and you could pop your Presence of Mind spell, which made your next cast instant, and you could instantly fire a pyro. Well, what you could do is you could fire up a pyroblast or fireball, and then as soon as you let it go, then Presence of Mind and instantly pyroblast right after it with the fire blast after. Great combo of damage, but I was such a noob that I didn't take pyroblast, and I was using my Presence of Mind on fireball for months until I figured out that I should have been using pyroblast.
Okay. What is your best guess as to the release date of World of Warcraft Classic?
Well, I'm honestly, I was confused why Blizzard announced it at the time that they did. I'm sure they have their own reasons, but I feel like they really have nothing at all in place and that they're not in any type of real rush to get it going. So even though they probably had their own reasons for announcing it, it feels like we have a while to wait. So I was thinking maybe at the earliest sometime by November or the end of 2019, but I'm really thinking maybe sometime after that in 2020.
Okay. What was the moment you fell in love with World of Warcraft?
Wow. Well, I remember coming home from university and for the summer, and my friend said, "Oh, you got to get this game. It's World of Warcraft." And, I'd played Warcraft 2 and had a lot of fun. And I was in college and I played console games and stuff like that, like Madden, but I wasn't really into desktop gaming that much. And, I tried to push him aside, but he just was very nag. And so me, him, and another friend, we all took our computers and we brought him over to my one friend's house. And we set up in the basement and, we just started playing. And I started playing that Warlock I told you about earlier that I never got to 60 with. And I think my friend had what was this class? My one friend had a Paladin. And I can't remember what my other friend rolled, but it was just the three of us and just running around. And we had no idea what we were doing. And yet we were having so much fun. And, that was probably the best fun I ever had.
Okay.
When everything is fresh and new for the first time, that's what you can't recreate. And that's what people always say about, that WoW is all nostalgia and you'll play a private server and it won't be the same. Yeah, it may not be the same, but it's, but it's going to be great. And you can play the game a million different ways. You can roll a different class. You can do different things.
Final question for you. Tell me why you, Funk Nasty, are most excited for World of Warcraft Classic.
Well, wow. Well, I'm excited because Blizzard is going to be bringing it to us. It's not. I've been playing on. I played on 2 or 3 private servers in the past, and it's just not a polished experience. And what Blizzard is going to bring us, hopefully, is a very polished game that works properly. And if they're able to bring us that same product, that's what I'm most excited about. It's just they don't have the people that they used to have, the original people that built the game and that love the game. So I'm just hoping that the new people they have are able to bring us the product that the players want.
Okay. Thank you so much again for taking the time out for us here today, Funk Nasty. I really do appreciate it. One more time, if people want to have a chat to you or find you somewhere, where can they find you either in-game or outside of it?
In-game, you can find me on Anathema, and my character's name is Funk Nasty. And there's also a bunch of Discords I'm in. You can find me, let's see here. You can find me on the Lights Hope Discord. In the Anathema PvP channel.
Okay. Thank you so much again for talking all things PvP with us. And as I said, it's probably going to get to the point a few weeks further down the track where we might have to get you back on to get even further into details, because this was just a bit of a general overview for people just to refresh the memories and get the blood pumping again for PvP. But perhaps next time we'll talk about how the pros win a battleground and what to do in specific battlegrounds and how to deal with each and every class when they come up to gank you.
Sounds like fun.
All right. Thanks very much again.
No problem, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Hey everyone, it's me again. I hope you all enjoyed that great chat with Funk Nasty. And thank you so much to him again for taking the time out for the show. Funk Nasty and I have already talked about that conversation barely scratching the PvP surface. And he'll be back in a few weeks to go over everything twinking. So please do stay tuned for that interview, which I'm sure will be fantastic as well. If you have any comments or feedback about the chat that you just heard, then please do get in touch with the show at feedback@countdowntoclassic.com. But with that interview done now, that's the show for the week. Just before I let you go, I've got a few shout outs to get through and a little bit of show news. Shout out to the Countdown Council members: Borzen, Palfuris, Seven Winters, Tsunami, Wilson Ma, and Volako. Thank you so much for your amazing support. The show would not be the same without you. Now, as I mentioned at the top of the show, know, the scheduling has had to be a little bit flexible lately due to work being hectic and a bit of travel and partying on my end. But I very much so hope to bring you another lore episode on Friday, and we'll be diving into the history of Blackrock Mountain. Not the dungeons and raids, just the mountain itself. Some of you have asked for that one, and I'm looking forward to sitting down for story time about the Dark Iron Dwarves and Ragnaros, amongst other things. But for now, that's everything, folks. Thank you so much for listening and continuing to support Countdown to Classic. I'll be back with you all on Friday, I hope. Bye. See you later.